Governors Forum, and he will be speaking to us from his office in Ado-Ekiti. Thank you.
Thank you, the platform. I bring you warm greetings from the Nigeria Governors Forum and the good people of Ekiti State. These are very difficult times, and I empathize with you on account of the impact the pandemic is having on all our lives. Not only have our economic activities been impacted, I join my faith with yours that all of this will soon be over by the grace of God. Let me start by expressing immense gratitude to my brother and friend, Pastor Poju Oyemade, the senior pastor of the Covenant Nation and the convener of the platform, for the opportunity to engage with you today. Pastor Poju and his team have consistently pursued a unique apostolic mandate for many years, not only catering to the spiritual needs of the church, but also advancing the frontiers of nation building and social reformation. The impact of the various expressions of this ministry is undeniable, especially the platform, which has become an effective town hall gathering that facilitates conversations in an unfiltered yet convivial atmosphere, and is now by far one of Nigeria's leading avenues for bridging the gap between leaders and the people. Conversations are important. They're the lifeblood of every relationship. And as I've often stated in the past, the widespread cynicism and distrust between government and the people is usually caused by a lack of robust communication and feedback mechanisms for engagement on important issues affecting the lives and livelihoods of the people. I am therefore very pleased to be here today with some of my brother governors from other states who are equally joining us remotely or physically from different parts of the country, as well as some other personalities in government who are playing key roles in the battle against COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria. Together, we will be sharing information on what government is doing and hopefully take some feedback from you. But what has government been doing? On January 30th, 2020, the World Health Organization, WHO, declared the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, as a public health emergency of international concern. On March 11, 2020, the outbreak was officially declared a global pandemic, effectively activating a range of protocols for a global pandemic response. Since then, the World Health Organization has been leading efforts to support countries in preventing, detecting, and responding to the pandemic and monitoring the response. Our relevant government entities are in constant touch with the WHO and their counterparts in other countries to better understand the novel virus and to benefit from knowledge sharing on strategies and measures being adopted. At the national level, President Muhammadu Buhari very quickly into the crisis set up the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 under the chairmanship of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa. I would allow federal government representatives here to speak more about the key interventions at the federal level, whilst I talk specifically about the role of state governments in the pandemic response. Given the emergency nature of the pandemic, there has been a plethora of diverse stakeholders: United Nations, multilaterals, bilaterals, private sector players, foundations, philanthropists, amongst others, also involved in the quest to contain the pandemic. State governments clearly have a central and crucial role in the pandemic response. The federal government has done well to extensively consult with governors on key steps being taken, and I can confidently say to you Now, most of the actions by the federal government had considerable input from state governments, singularly and jointly as the Nigeria Governors Forum. In the past 6 weeks, governors have held weekly meetings to review the state's containment strategies, with constant feedback to Mr. President, to the Vice President, and the task force on COVID-19. In this context, the Nigerian Governors Forum recently agreed to coordinate the state government response to COVID-19 along these general guidelines. 1. Lockdown of all interstate boundaries except for essential movements of food, medical and pharmaceuticals, beverages, petroleum products, and agricultural products. 2. Increase in the capacity for testing in states as part of improving the state health infrastructure. 3. Airports and aviation lockdown. Relaxation of movement within states based on each state's assessment of their individual vulnerabilities. 5. Ban on large gatherings, including religious, social, educational, and political events. And 6. Compulsory wearing of face masks if there is any need to go out of the house. These measures became necessary in view of evidence that interstate travel from the main epicenters of the outbreak, Lagos, Abuja, and now Kano, have been responsible for the spread of infection to many states, including Ekiti State. At least 34 of our 36 states now have people who have been infected by COVID-19 virus. And the prognosis is that no state would eventually escape the scourge. A coordinated restriction on interstate travel is therefore expected to reduce the spread significantly, with a view to quickly bringing the pandemic under control. In addition to this, every state in the country has developed their respective state pandemic response strategies, what is known in the technical lingo as incident action plans, and have in place standing state pandemic response task forces. The strategies at the state level take into consideration the uniqueness of the state, including geography, population, culture, religion, etc. For us in Ekiti, we inaugurated the Ekiti State COVID-19 Response Task Force, chaired by me on March 2nd, 2020, and also set up a committee to mobilize resources for the implementation of our multifaceted strategy. As indicated earlier, pandemic response is dynamic, and as leaders, we are guided primarily by the advice from experts in the medical and related fields. Some of the steps we have taken in Ekiti State include a strategic lockdown of the state for about a month now, with tactical breaks in between to allow for people to restock on essentials. We've also deployed an extensive palliatives program catering to the most vulnerable segments of our population, particularly the elderly and the poor, and those who have suffered loss of income. In this regard, we have been able to leverage our database of vulnerable segments of the society from existing social security programs, as well as structures we have created to reach our people effectively. Ekiti State has always been renowned as a leader in social security provisioning among subnational governments in sub-Saharan Africa. I'm especially proud of the level of compliance and cooperation amongst our people, which was demonstrated in a recent viral video showing an Ekiti man who refused to allow his son into the house after the young lad sneaked into the state against existing measures. The man did the responsible thing and handed the boy over to the state government for the mandatory 14 days quarantine. Such is the level of cooperation the good people of Ekiti have given to government, which makes our job a lot easier. But clearly, it's no longer going to be business as usual. This crisis has taught us one big lesson, that we're only as strong as our weakest link. Globally, the virus has been particularly unkind to our senior citizens and people with underlying health conditions. Economically, the restrictions put in place by the federal and state governments have been tough on our more vulnerable people, leading to widespread concerns about job losses and food security. Even in the aftermath of this virus, many have suggested the world as we've known it will change permanently, and force a review of many existing business and even government models we took for granted. Nigeria must emerge from this crisis with a plan to create jobs, reduce poverty, and put food on the table of our citizens. We must attract investment required to bridge our infrastructure deficit and prioritize the provision of critical investments in education, healthcare, security, and other social protection needs. Agriculture, the mainstay of our national and many subnational economies, has never been more important, especially as we seek to reduce hunger. COVID-19 has shown the importance of food security, and our ability to call on the nation's food reserve at this time only validates the federal government's decision to prioritize food production. As the planting season is upon us, our next set of interventions must focus on the following areas: a massive national land clearing program to open new land banks for agriculture, farm roads that ensure the effective transportation of inputs to and produce from farms, extension services leveraging mobile and digital technology, which will not only enumerate and geotag farmlands to unlock dead capital, but also share best practices with our farmers using mobile phones. Irrigation infrastructure to support wet and dry season farming, which bring an immediate uplift to yields, funding for our research institutes and universities to develop more productive inputs, and finally, improving the linkage between farmers and markets by promoting more offtake and outgrower schemes with the private sector. Governments at the state level are ready to engage partners keen to work on these issues. We absolutely need to create the enabling environment for the economy to grow again. We must ensure a skilled and healthy workforce is developed to benefit from these investments and the expected adjustments to the global supply chain. We must optimize our population by preparing for the future of work, from early stage education to technical and vocational training and digital skills training. We should equip our young people with the skills needed to take jobs in the post-COVID-19 age. However, as we chart a long-term plan for Nigeria to emerge stronger from the crisis, we must also reflect on the immediate actions to address our short-term challenges. With a reduction in revenues, we must reduce the cost of government. Apart from the passage of supplementary budgets by federal and state governments, we need to explore various recommendations on streamlining ministries, departments, and agencies of government to reduce wastage. We must also be ready to eliminate or minimize non-core expenses and also ensure the wage bill at all levels of government is accompanied by accountability, productivity, and effectiveness of our workforce. There is an immediate opportunity to support our businesses, particularly SMEs, support our women to rebuild family structures, whilst modifying the conditions for existing loan guarantees and creating new opportunities that can encourage financial institutions to support small businesses recovering from the economic slowdown. In order to boost consumption, government can also allow employees who have lost their jobs to access a portion of their pension contributions earlier than the period stipulated in the Pensions Reform Act. There is no national or subnational plan that will not depend on the security of lives and property to succeed. By focusing on job creation and poverty reduction, we will reduce the lack of opportunity, which remains a big incentive for crime. However, for those who still insist on criminality, we must be ready to tackle them with well-trained, equipped, and appropriately remunerated security agencies.